Hello everyone, Simon here. We are in Assassin's Creed 4. We just finished the game and it's time to look at architecture. So there's not that much architecture in this game to look at. There's Havana, there's Kingston, and there's like one thing in Nassau. So it's not much, but it should be interesting to look at the history and architecture of colonial Caribbean islands, I guess. So let's start off with Havana, which is where we are now. Most of the buildings are here. So if we go to the database, Animus, let's go to locations first. So there's a bunch of locations, but we're not going to look at all of them. Just look at the main cities. So Havana, the Animus database tells us that, if I can do this, there were several attempts to found a town near the Havana Bay in the early 1500s. A settlement was established by the Spanish conquistador Diego Velázquez de Cuellar around 1514. The city sits on a bay that opens to the Gulf Stream and thus became a natural stopping point between Europe and the Americas. In the earliest stages of the golden age of piracy, Havana was burnt to the ground by French corsair Jacques de Sores. By the 1700s, Havana was a large, heavily fortified port city where Spanish treasure ships would dock on their way to Europe. Pirates lurked on the approaches to the city, hoping to capture these same ships. Cool. Let's go to our friend Wikipedia. Let's go to Havana. We'll only look at the colonial stuff and not look at all of the history. So Havana, according to Google Maps, is there, which is not the same place as in the game. In the game, Havana is there. Let me just This is the strangest thing. In the game, Havana. Oh, I see. No, it's okay. Well, the scale is completely off. You can see how big the island is compared to the city here. It's a massive harbor there, whereas in real life, that's the island. Well, that's Cuba. The island of Cuba, and the bay, the city that's in the game is only this little bit here, right? Alright, so you can see the scale is a little bit off. The shape of it looks fairly reliable. There's the city wall. No, there's the city wall. Actually, I'm not sure if the city wall is still there. But you can still see the shape of the town and the streets and all that. Doesn't seem to be any fortifications left. Alright, so Wikipedia tells us Havana is the capital city, province, major port, and leading commercial center of Cuba. Hey, look at all this stuff. The city proper has a population of 2.1 million inhabitants and spans a total of 728 kilometers squared, making it the largest city by area, the most populous city, and the third largest metropolitan area in the Caribbean region. The city extends mostly westward and southward from the bay, which is entered through a narrow inlet, and which divides into three main harbors: the Marimelena, Guanabacoa, and Atares. The sluggish Almendares River traverses the city from south to north, entering the Straits of Florida a few miles west of the city. That's probably not what are we talking about. So the river, a few miles west of the city, or this river. So the city, alright, I mean it's pretty big now. So you can see the historic town is there, and then it extends all the way down here, right? The city of Havana was founded by the Spanish in the 16th century, and due to its strategic location, it served as a springboard for the Spanish conquest of the continent, becoming a stopping point for the treasure-laden Spanish galleons on the crossing between the Old World, and the Old World. What is this? Oldie World and the Old World? That doesn't make any... What is that? King Philip II of Spain granted Havana the title of city in 1592. Walls as well as forts were built to protect the old city. The sinking of the US battleship Maine in Havana's harbor in 1898 was the immediate cause of the Spanish-American War. Huh. Contemporary Havana can essentially be described as three cities in one: Old Havana, Vedado, and the newer suburban districts. The city is the center of the Cuban government, blah blah blah. So this is the new stuff. Let's go to history, shall we? History and architecture is what we're interested in. So the history of Havana, the colonial period, which is where we are now in the game, I guess. What is the year in the game? I'm not sure. Conquistador Diego Velázquez de Cuellar, I'm probably mangling the pronunciation of that, founded Havana in August 25th, 1515 or 1514. They don't even know which year it is. On the southern coast of the island, near the present town of Surgidero de Batabano, or more likely on the banks of the Mayabeque River close to Playa Mayabeque. All attempts to found a city on Cuba's south coast failed. However, an early map of Cuba drawn in 1514 places the town at the mouth of this river. Okay, but that's not where we are now though, that's like to the east a little bit. Between 1514 and 1519, the Spanish established at least two different settlements on the north coast. One of them in La Corriera, today in the neighborhood of Puentes Grandes, next to the Almendares River. The town that became Havana originated adjacent to what was then called Puerto de Carenas, literally Careening Bay, in 1519. The quality of this natural bay, which now hosts Havana's harbor, warranted this change of location. So for some reason, this is like the best harbor in this part of the island, but they completely missed it the first time they founded the city. But in 1519, they kind of put the city here. Panfilo de Narvaez gave Havana, the sixth town founded by the Spanish on Cuba, its name, San Cristobal de la Habana. The name combines San Cristobal, patron saint of Havana, and Habana, of obscure origin, possibly derived from Habaguenix, a Native American chief who controlled that area, as mentioned by Diego Velázquez in his report to the King of Spain. Shortly after the founding of Cuba's first cities, the island served as little more than a base for the conquista of other lands. Right. You know, all the pillaging and looting and murder of Native Americans in South America by the Spanish. Havana began as a trading port and suffered regular attacks by buccaneers, pirates, and French corsairs. The first attack and resultant burning of the city was by the French corsair Jacques de Torres in 1555. Such attacks convinced the Spanish crown to fund the construction of the first fortresses in the main cities, not only to counteract the pirates and corsairs, but also to exert more control over commerce with the West Indies, and to limit the extensive contrabando, the black market, that has arisen due to the trade restrictions imposed by the Casa de Contratación of Seville. What is that? The crown-controlled trading house that held a monopoly on the New World trade. I see. So it's controlled by the king, and has a monopoly on trade in the West Indies. Ships from all over the New World carried products first to Havana in order to be taken by the fleet to Spain. The thousands of ships gathered in the city's bay also fueled Havana's agriculture and manufacture, since they had to be supplied with food, water, and other products needed to traverse the ocean. Thousands of ships gathered in the ship's bay, so it's massive. Well, I guess so. This is the bay, Havana port. Thousands of ships in here. Alright, we're just gonna use our imagination for the moment. On December 20th, 1592, King Philip II of Spain granted Havana the title of city. Later on, the city would be officially designated as key to the New World and rampart of the West Indies by the Spanish crown. In the meantime, efforts to build or improve the defensive infrastructures of the city continued. Havana expanded greatly in the 17th century. New buildings were constructed from the most abundant materials of the island, mainly wood, combining various Iberian architectural styles as well as borrowing profusely from Canarian characteristics. Interesting. So colonial Spanish architecture is pretty interesting. In 1649, a very fatal epidemic brought from Cartagena in Colombia affected a third of the population of Havana. By the middle of the 18th century, Havana had more than 70,000 inhabitants and was the third largest city in the Americas, ranking behind Lima and Mexico City, but ahead of Boston and New York. During the 18th century, Havana was the most important of the Spanish ports because it had facilities where ships could be refitted, and by 1740 it had become Spain's largest and most active shipyard and only dry dock in the New World. Basically one of the most important cities in the Americas. The city was captured by the British during the 7 Years' War. The episode began on June 6, 1762, when at dawn a British fleet comprising more than 50 ships and a combined force of over 11,000 men of the Royal Navy and Army sailed into Cuban waters and made an amphibious landing east of Havana. The British immediately opened up trade with their North American and Caribbean colonies, causing a rapid transformation of Cuban society. Less than a year after Havana was seized, the Peace of Paris was signed by the three warring powers, thus ending the 7 Years' War. The treaty gave Britain Florida in exchange for the city of Havana on the recommendation of the French, who advised that declining the offer would result in Spain losing Mexico and much of South American mainland to the British. Wait a minute. The treaty gave Britain Florida in exchange for the city of Havana on the recommendation of the French, who advised that declining the offer would result in Spain losing Mexico and much of the South American mainland to the British. Right. Because Havana was such a strategic port with a dry dock that could, maintain the navy of whoever controlled it, if Spain did not give up Florida in exchange for getting Havana back, Spain would then lose control of the rest of its colonies in South America and Mexico. I guess. Alright. After regaining the city, the Spanish transformed Havana into the most heavily fortified city in the Americas. Construction began on what was to become the fortress of San Carlos de la Cabana, the third largest Spanish fortification in the New World after Fort San Cristobal, the biggest, and Fort San Felipe de Moro, both in San Juan, Puerto Rico. On January 15th, 1796, the remains of Christopher Columbus were transported to the island from Santo Domingo. They rested here until 1898, when they were transferred to Seville's cathedral after Spain's loss of Cuba. I think we can end the reading there because that's all subsequent history, although, in the 19th century, Havana became a flourishing and fashionable city. So everything was pretty awesome up until sanctions. Anyway, so this is Havana, cool. So a very important strategic port, mostly held by the Spanish. So there's the map there. Architecture, hey, let's look at this. Due to Havana's almost 500-year existence, the city boasts some of the most diverse styles of architecture in the world. From castles built in the late 16th century to modern-day high-rises. Neoclassicism was introduced to the city in this is later though. Colonial and Baroque. Why is this in reverse chronological order? Why is it Baroque? Why is it Neoclassical first? That's weird. Shouldn't this... Yeah, so it should be Colonial and Baroque and then Neoclassical and then Art Deco and then Modernism, right? Because that's how the timeline goes. Anyway, so the stuff we can see in the game now, colonial and Baroque, riches were brought from the colonists into and through Havana as it was a key transshipment point between the New World and Old World. As a result, Havana was the most heavily fortified city in the Americas. Most example of early architecture can be seen in military fortifications such as La Fortaleza de San Carlos de la Cabana, designed by Battista Antonelli, and the Castello del Moro. This sits at the entrance of Havana Bay and provides an insight into the supremacy and wealth at that time. Old Havana was also protected by a defensive wall begun in 1674 but had already overgrown its boundaries when it was completed in 1767, becoming the new neighborhood of Central Havana. The influence from several styles and cultures can be seen in Havana's colonial architecture with a diverse range of Moorish architecture, Spanish, Italian, Greek, and Roman. We don't see that in the game. The San Carlos and San Ambrosio Seminary, 18th century, is a good example of early Spanish-influenced architecture. The Havana Cathedral, 1748 to 1777, dominating the Plaza de la Catedral, 1749, is the best example of Cuban Baroque. Surrounding it are the former palaces of the Count de Casa Bayona, 1720 to 1746, Marquis de Arcos, 1746, and the Marquis de Aguas Claras. Alright, so there's a bunch of interesting buildings, although there's not really any pictures of them. Why is there no... I guess they've... Actually, I think they was further up. So there's a bunch of landmarks. Let me just keep this list open. So, the colonial architecture that we're talking about should be this, the cathedral at Havana during the British occupation, August-September 1762. So that's the old cathedral. Alright, well, let's keep those things in mind. And let me just quickly run around the city a little bit. So there's the cathedral there. We can identify it from a distance. Forts. There should be forts. I think there's a fort over there. And I think there's another church further inland as well. Let's just have a quick run around the island and have a look. So there's the cathedral. Or maybe we should just start looking at the buildings already. Alright, so which side is the front? I guess this side is the front. It is built out of stone, so it's a pretty substantial construction. Especially since we're in the New World, right? We're pretty far away from Europe. And large buildings are not easy to build. Not seeing very much distinctive architectural styles in the other structures. So there's the cathedral. Alright, let's just start with this, since we're right here. Let's just stand back. Oh, this is the square. The square is here as well. Good. So we have the cathedral square and the cathedral itself, right? Alright, database and landmarks. Havana. This one? Cathedral of Havana. Oh wait, this is the wrong one. That's the Cathedral of Havana. Oh, we're looking at the Basilica Menor de San Francisco de Assis. A dominating presence on Havana's Plaza de San Francis. The Basilica Menor de San Francisco de Assis dates from 1580s. 1580s. I mean, nothing in the Wikipedia article really said much about this early on. Originally, a statue of St. Francis of Assisi stood atop the bell tower, but this was blown off in a cyclone in 1846. Baroque features were added to the basilica in 1730. So this thing is so all right. So I want to point to the building with my mouse, but then that just kind of messes up the selection. So you can see the columns and other decorative architectural features that are somewhat Baroque at the front. No perfect for us, blah blah blah. That's not very much information, alright? So the basilica, if we check, we follow the map, it should be around here. Nope. It's not. It's not where we think it is. That's a no. Oh, this is awkward. Is it just completely in the wrong place in the game? No, that can't be right. Or maybe maybe the land is reclaimed here. Haha, I don't know where it is. It should be pretty obvious in the map. What is this? Inglesi del Espiritu Santo. That's a different one, right? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where it is. Okay, let's go to here. Fortress, Christ of Havana. Nope. Really? We don't know where it is. Basilica. No, Basilica. Is that how they spell it? It's not how they spell it, though, is it? Nope, it is. The San Francisco DSC. Oh, wait. That doesn't look anything like it. This, if we can load I guess not. This doesn't look anything like it. Oh, no, this. Okay, this is, okay, here. Wow. It's just a gray blob. Well, I guess that's the roof. Can we not see... Can we get a street view? There's photos, there's no street view. I guess Google's not allowed in the Cuba or something. Okay, here it is. Okay, there's the photo of it. So from above, it's just a gray blob. That's a bit embarrassing. How do we... Nope. What are we doing? So this is... Why did it select? Oh, crap. Alright, so it's a gray blob on the map, unfortunately. Can we get a Google image search? Basilica Menodis. Okay, here it is. Right. Wikipedia tells us. Oh, that's not very much at all. Tells us the Basilica and Monastery of San Francisco de Assis, St. Francis of Assisi, was built in Havana, Cuba at the end of the 16th century as the home of the Franciscan community, and were altered in the Baroque style in 1730. Right. The church was used for their worship by the English during the year in which they ruled Havana. When it returned to Spanish rule, they chose not to use it as a church. It is now used for concerts. That's interesting. They got it back and they decided not to use it anymore. Why is that? Attached to the basilica is a bell tower. Originally, a statue of St. Francis of Assisi stood at the top of the bell tower, but it was destroyed by a cyclone in 1846. Today, a statue of Fray Junipero Sierra with Juanino, an Indian boy. Oh, it says Junipero. I don't know what it is. It stands next to the basilica. The cloister of the adjacent monastery, which dates back to 1739, now houses a museum of sacred art. In front of the basilica on the sidewalk stands a bronze life-size statue by Jose Soberon of Jose Maria Lopez Leiden, known as El Caballero de Paris, who is buried inside the basilica. Why is that important? Alright, so it was used by the Franciscan community until the city got captured by the English, and then they abandoned it. And it became a museum. Huh. That's interesting. I mean, it's still a pretty impressive building, right? Even today, it looks exactly like this. Except that on the other side, there's a monastery. Like over here, there's a monastery. But they don't use it anymore. This is kind of interesting. So all the pictures of the cathedral are from this side, because the other side is a monastery, and then the front of it, I guess, there's buildings in the way. So there's a bell tower there, and the roof. Let's just check the roof. I don't suppose there's anything interesting in the roof, but I kind of want to see it. The Wikipedia article isn't very long neither. It doesn't really say why it was abandoned by the Franciscans. Okay, well the roof is just a grey blob. I see. Interesting shape though, the roof. Like the windows go up like this. Huh, interesting. Is it actually concrete? What is it made of? It looks like concrete there. I don't know what it looks like in real life though. Can we images? Like there's no the inside looks like that. Wait a minute, the roof isn't actually like that. Oh wait, or maybe so this is a historic image of it, and you can see the roof is actually pitched a little bit. So the roof, oh, okay, look. So the roof doesn't look like that anymore. And you can see there's a monastery on the other side of it. And the side is in fact not as interesting. So the Baroque stuff was added later, maybe. You can see the Baroque facade there. The roof is more pointed. Curious. But alright, I guess that's pretty much all we have to say about this one, unfortunately. Alright, so what else should we do next? Oh, is this? No, that's not the monastery. What else should we do next? Let's go down the list of things to look at. Database, Animus, Landmarks Havana, Castillo de la Rio Fuerza. Completed in 1577, this castle replaced an older, inadequate castle protecting Havana's harbor. In due course, the Castillo de la Rio Fuerza, complete with sloping limestone walls and a moat, proved inadequate as well and was later converted into an official residence. But where is it? Castillo... let me... Oh, here it is. The game knows. Interesting. Alright, so it's a star-shaped fort turned into a massive house. That's either a tiny fort or a really big house. Okay, so it's got it's a star fort with a moat, and it's to the north. Let's see if we can find it in the game, shall we? That would be... Oh, did they just stick it out in the water? I guess they must have. Man, they took some liberties with this. So instead of it being on... Or maybe... It looks like Havana, modern day Havana, has seen some land reclamation. So maybe they reclaimed the fort out of the sea. But no, the Animus database talked about a moat. And you can't really have a moat if it's out in the ocean. You only have a moat if you build it on land and you're surrounded with an artificial water barrier. So, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. So the fort, we've seen it in the game. The interior is not too interesting, and it might actually be quite different from how it is in real life. I mean, the fort looks pretty adequate here, although it's not that big. Maybe it's not enough to hold the garrison. So there's the fort, as far as I can tell. Let's see what Wikipedia has to say about it. Come back here. What's it called again? Maybe just copy and paste. Alright. Wikipedia says the Castillo de la Rio Fuerza, Castle of the Royal Force, is a star fort on the western side of the harbor in Havana, Cuba, set back from the entrance and bordering the Plaza de Armas. Originally built to defend against attack by pirates, it suffered from a poor strategic position, being too far inside the city. Oh, too far inside the bay, my bad. It's too far inside the bay, so it didn't actually stop people coming in. By the time it could fire on the enemies were already inside the bay. The fort is considered to be the oldest stone fort in the Americas and was listed in 1982 as part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Old Havana and its fortifications. So, it's in a bad location. But it does look exactly like how it is in the game, kind of, except it's in the wrong place. A previous fort that was Villa, Old Force, Villa, was badly damaged in 1555 during an attack on Havana by the French privateer Jacques de Sores, and eventually was demolished in 1582. In 1558, Bartolome Sanchez, an engineer appointed by King Philip II of Spain, began work on the new fort, initially known as the Fuerza Nova, New Force. New Force? Or is it Force or Fort? I guess New Force. The Fuerza Villa was set back from the harbor, but the new fort was planned to be closer to the harbor to give it a better strategic location. The ironworks were established in 1558, but the first stones were not laid until 1562. Construction was delayed due to complaints from local residents forced to relocate to make way for the building, and from disagreements between Sanchez and the governor of Havana. The fort was not completed until 1577, with slaves and French prisoners providing most of the labor, of course. Built of limestone quarried from the Havana shoreline, the fortification incorporated thick sloping walls, a moat, and a drawbridge. The governor, Francisco Quirino, ordered the addition of an upper story as barracks and a munition store, but on completion the fort proved to be too small for practical use. On completion, it was proved to be too small. So they went to the trouble of building the thing, and it was immediately too small. Despite being positioned closer to the harbor than Fuerza Vieja, it became quickly apparent that the new fort was still too distant from the mouth of the harbor to serve effectively as a defensive bulwark. Instead, Juan de Tejeda adopted it as the residence of the governor of Havana. Subsequent governors made changes to the building. The facade of the fortress was demolished in 1851 to allow O'Reilly Street to go all the way to the docks and prevent the fort from overshadowing El Templete, which was completed in 1828. Wait a minute, the facade of the fortress is demolished? So what does it look like? What did it look like before? La Giraldilla. In 1634, Juan Vitrian di Viamonte added a watchtower with a wither vane sculpted in the form of a woman by Geronimo Martin Pinzon, an artist from Havana, and based on the figure crowning La Giralda in Seville. Although the reason for the choice of this figure, called La Giraldilla, is not known, a common suggestion is to honor Inés de Bobadilla, Havana's only female governor, who assumed control from her husband Hernando de Soto when he undertook an expedition to Florida. She spent many years scanning the horizon for signs of his returning ship. Unbeknownst to her, he had died. The figure became the symbol of the city of Havana. It features on the Havana Club rum note label and is now held at the City Museum, housed in the Palacio de los Capitanes Generales in the Plaza de Armas, while a copy is in its place in the watchtower. Okay, well that's not that important. The fort was home to the National Art. Okay, this is later. This is much, much later. Never mind. So it looks like that. I guess there used to be a thing on top, and they kind of demolished that. I'm like saying they demolished the facade of the fort. I guess they mean the building on top, or was there something in front of the fort? Anyway, that's in the wrong place because, or maybe it's not. Let's see. There's a fort there as well. Interesting. And there's kind of a fort there as well. Although we can't actually go there, can we? Alright, so there's the fort. It was built in the wrong place, and upon completion, it was immediately too small and too far away from the harbor to be useful. I mean, imagine being the guy who designed this. It's like you spend all that time, you spend all this stone building a fort, and it was immediately useless. Imagine being that guy. That must suck.